Shut up and sit down.
What's the story, Internet? Hope everyone is having a wonderful day so far. So today I have another episode where I'm going to talk about something in the world of football, since we are stuck with international football still. So today I'm going to do two parts. The first one is going to be the more serious, depressing part, which is administration. And the second part is going to be much happier. It's going to be about Phoenix clubs and things rising from the ashes. So what is administration? Administration is when a football club is unable to pay off its debts. A perfect example of this is Portsmouth from about a decade ago, where they couldn't pay off their debts because of the owner. And they not only did they go into insolvency, but they were also deducted points. So they were relegated from the Premier League and then subsequently relegated from the Championship and League One. So they ended up in League Two without an owner. So it can be pretty harsh for some teams. Another example of this is Rangers, arguably one of the biggest teams in Scotland. And this happened in 2012, and they were relegated to the third division of Scottish football, which is unheard of. And I actually didn't even know there was a third division of Scottish football. So yeah, it was a crazy, crazy arrangement. In fact, the new owners came in and bought it for £1 because they had to bankrupt the old club and buy the club for £1. So it was a crazy, crazy situation. And under the regulations, if they are unable to pay off their debts, transfer fees, wages, and other things like that get paid first. So it doesn't matter about the stadium or anything like that. It's the money that is gained from the bankruptcy goes to that. Now, sometimes it goes even further. And the reason I'm wearing a Bury shirt is because this happened to my local hometown team, Bury, quite recently, where the club actually went bankrupt and faded from existence. And that's very sad because the team has been around for over 100 years. In fact, they were the first team to win the FA Cup back-to-back in 1905 and 1906. So for such a historic club, and there's been so many clubs on the verge of that. West Ham, it nearly happened to. Portsmouth, as I mentioned. Wigan and Bolton are both in talks that it might happen to them. So you see teams just fade off the face of the planet. And it's quite a sad thing because they're such an important part of the community in most cases. So, however, as I mentioned earlier, from the ashes doth rise something new and positive. And in the case of Bury, there is a new club called Bury AFC instead of Bury FC, and it's owned by the fans. And obviously I'm unable to watch any of the matches, but I've been keeping up with them. I've been following their Twitter, and it just seems like an incredible organisation. I mean, they've been raising money for other teams. They've been wishing other teams in the division well in the FA Cup. It seems like it's just such a family and community environment. And it's so nice to see that. And a similar thing happened with Portsmouth after their struggles, where it wasn't a Phoenix club per se, but when the Pompey Supporters Trust took over, it really started to get that community feel back to it. And there are many, many other examples. And for some reason, there are a lot of examples in America, in the MLS. The San Jose Earthquakes, it's happened to twice. The Seattle Sounders, it's happened to 3 times. The Portland Timbers, it's happened to 3 times. The New York Cosmos, it's happened to twice. So there's just so many teams where this has happened. It's crazy. But there's examples all across the globe. And the most recent of which in England have been Bury FC and then a team called Rill FC. But it's nice to see out of such devastation and hardship, a pillar of the community rise. And this brings up a point where, and it's going to segue into my next video, which is going to come out next week, about ownership. Because it's all well and good having a superstar owner. Take, for example, I keep bringing them up, but Portsmouth are currently owned by Michael Eisner, the owner of Disney. So that's fantastic. But then if you look at owners like the Glazer family at Manchester United, Fenway Sports Group at Liverpool, and Stan Kroenke at Arsenal, they're so far removed from what the club means to them. And I'm not going to go too far into it because, like I said, that's a video for another day. But one thing I did want to bring up was something called the 50+1 rule. And this is a ruling that's used in German football. And I think it's a really good way to stop a superstar owner from coming in and ruining a football team. So what it means, and I'm going to read from the Wikipedia page just so I don't confuse anyone. The 50+1 rule is an informal term used to refer to a clause in the regulations of the Deutsche Fußball-Liga. The clause states that in order to obtain a license to compete in the Bundesliga, a club must hold a majority of its own voting rights. The rule is designed to ensure that the club's members retain overall control by way of owning 50% of shares plus 1 share, protecting clubs from the influence of external investors. Now, the club members, those are the season ticket holders. Those are influential people. For example, at Bayern Munich, it would be Karl-Heinz Rummenigge and Oliver Kahn. So you've got these influential club people that hold the club's best interests. For example, a Manchester United way of looking at that would be Alex Ferguson, Bobby Charlton, and the likes having influence because they understand what it means to be part of that club. Whereas a bunch of rich billionaires probably don't even pay attention to football and they're just doing it as a luxury investment. So it's one of those things where you want to bring the fans as close to the interaction as possible. And at the end of the day, they're the ones that truly own the football team. They're the ones that have the club tattooed onto their arm, or they're the ones that buy the shirts and the merchandise to support the team. They're the ones that watch week in, week out, wake up at 4:30 Pacific Standard Time because kickoff is at 12:30 Greenwich Mean Time. They're the ones that truly care about the team. And they could be having the worst week of their life, but if their football team performs on the day that they play, it means the world to them. And so it's sad when you see administration and bankruptcy happen to these teams, because it's not just a sporting entity, it's a community entity, it's a personal entity, it's something that people take very, very seriously. And to non-sporting people, that sounds very silly, but it is such a family thing going and watching a sporting event. You have this sense of community with the other fans and the players, even though you're not interacting them, but you are there with one common goal. And that is what makes us feel human at the end of the day. So this 50+1 rule isn't perfect. There's actually a section called criticism, but it's an idea. And it's one of the things that made it, take for example, tickets in Germany are rarely extortionately priced. They're not too bad in England, but the season ticket prices are quite high. But they're reasonable in Germany. They're based on people's income. They're the reason that teams like FC St. Pauli can exist, that is against homophobia and racism and Islamophobia. It brings all of this, and I keep saying this word, but it's a good word, this community element. So I think it's something that's worth discussing. And I think it's something to be aware of, because there's been more administrations and more bankruptcy in the last 20 years in football than there ever has been. The first one that I remember hearing about was AFC Wimbledon going out of existence. And from the ashes rose another team but it's not the same. Now, AFC Bury is an interesting case in point because it's a fan-owned club and it's a fan-sponsored club, and that makes it so that the fans have more of an investment in it. So, but I just thought that was an interesting topic, and I think it leads nicely into the next video. So we'll count this as a part one, an unofficial part one, and then the part two should be out probably on Monday. So keep an eye out for that video. And in the meantime, I hope you are all staying safe, keeping out of trouble. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day. And ta-ra for now.